Hi, everyone. I'm Stacy Gilbert. I am going to be the moderator for tonight's event. I'll be asking Julian all the questions. We have about 20 or so questions to ask, and if you have any additional questions, if you can type them into the chat to Gazella, she's going to be taking the questions tonight and getting them to us so that we can ask them. I am helping with Julian's campaign with setup, and I got involved because it's really important that we have young candidates that are serving in city and county and other local offices serving so that they're ready and primed for the next stage to be able to run for Congress and state office and other offices that are national. And we can't get experienced candidates if they're not getting into these other local campaigns. What's really cool about Julian is his experience, and he's going to talk about that in a second, but he's a really well-rounded candidate who has been serving in the school district. He's grown up here his whole life, and he's got some really wonderful experience with the RTD uh, transportation district that he's serving. And he's on the executive board, and he's got some really wonderful experience in finance and safety that kind of translates to taking on the GOP candidate. When I look at a candidate that I'm going to vote for in the general election, I want to make sure that my candidate has the credentials and the experience to take on the GOP because their candidate, they're experienced, and in this particular location, the candidate's a veteran. So the more experience, the better. With that, I'm going to introduce Julian.
Thank you so much, Stacy.
He is going to do a short presentation, and then I'm going to start with the questions, okay?
Thank you so much. And thank you guys all for attending. So Julien Bouquet, RTD Director for District G, which represents mostly Parker and Lone Tree, but some other parts of Douglas County down here. I'm also a school teacher here at Douglas County, and I also grew up here in Douglas County, so I know the county quite well. So what we're mainly going to talk about today is I'm going to give you a short introduction about kind of who I am and why I'm ultimately running. And then Stacy's going to ask 20 or so questions, like she mentioned. Those questions are going to be particularly about kind of what a county commissioner is going to be doing and what their leadership will look like going forward from 2025 to 2029. So we really hope this is going to be a great session for you guys to not only figure out who I am, but also figure out the responsibilities of a county commissioner and why our campaign is so crucial in winning in November. So, who is Julian? So, like I mentioned, I grew up here in Douglas County. I grew up in the Pinery, so just south of Parker. I am a Douglas County School District graduate, so I went to Legend High School in Parker, class of 2013. Had the awesome opportunity of actually getting to speak at my graduation, so that was excellent and a great experience for my leadership and my confidence, which I really appreciated. And then I just went up the road to the University of Denver, studied there for 3 years and graduated there early. And during my time going to DU, it was a great college experience. And what was excellent about it was actually getting to ride RTD, ride the E-line every day to actually get to campus. That gave me my transit experience. That also gave my experience of kind of understanding the city and understanding public works in general. So I really appreciate the time there. Now, I'm currently a Douglas County School District teacher. So I haven't moved around too much, but I now teach in Highlands Ranch. I'm at Rocky Heights Middle School, go Nighthawks. It is the feeder area of Rock Canyon. So if you're aware, it's kind of that Highlands Ranch East area. And I'm our media and tech teacher. I'm also a coach there. I coach flag football. I coach basketball, and I'm also our athletic coordinator at Rocky Heights, which is our second in command for our athletics program at our school. Political volunteer. So I've actually been working on campaigns since I was 18 years old. The first campaign I worked on was the Obama re-election campaign. It was a good experience for me, knocked on hundreds, if not thousands of doors in the Parker, Lone Tree, Castle Rock, and Aurora area during that time. got a lot of experience, met a lot of great folks, and kind of fell in love with canvassing overall. During the 2014 campaign, I was a volunteer and then a canvas manager for the Udall re-election campaign, which unfortunately was not successful, but got a lot of great experience canvassing in Parker and in Aurora and other parts of Arapahoe County. I then did some volunteer work on the Hillary Clinton election campaign, um, knocked on hundreds of doors down here in Douglas County, trying to kind of spread the word about that campaign, which luckily Clinton did win in Colorado. Unfortunately, due to the Electoral College, which is a whole nother topic, did not win in that one. I then knocked on doors during our bond measure back in 2018 to fight for our fellow school teachers here in Douglas County so that they could get a pay raise. And then in 2020, that gets us to our last bullet point of I was actually working with Lone Tree Votes, which was associated with the Dougco Dems at the time. Our big mission was trying to activate more voters in the Lone Tree area. I had just moved to Lone Tree at the time, and there's a lot of young folks living in the apartments, and getting them activated was a big goal of ours. So I kind of helped and got involved. And for the last couple of months of that beginning of that 2020 cycle, I was approached. We have a position for RTD director in District G. There's an incumbent coming up. He's a Tea Party conservative, and he's backed by the Republican Party. Does anyone want to run? And I said, well, I have the experience of riding on the transit system. My opponent has very little to know about the transit system because he doesn't actually ride RTD. And so I decided to run. And we won. We won by over 7,000 votes. As you can see, that's our Ballotpedia article right there, a little screenshot of it, where we beat Ken Bahalik, who was the incumbent. We beat him 54 to 46%. Again, pretty healthy margins for a person who was backed up by the Democrats and a person who was backed up by the Republicans, and winning down here in Douglas County was huge. And ever since, I now have been serving on the RTD board. Big things that there's a lot of bullet points, and I'll save you the details with a lot of it because it's been a lot of work that I've gone into doing while balancing being a school teacher. So RTD, the board does pay, but I think we walk away with about $900 a month. So nothing you can do full time. So pretty much working as a part-time elected while working as a full-time teacher, it keeps you pretty busy. One of the first things that keep me busy, though, was bringing back service back to Douglas County. So if you do a little math, you look at when I was originally elected, and that was back in 2020, right in the height of COVID. Now, in 2021, we had lost a lot of service. And one of the first things I advocated for was protecting public transportation in Parker, which included our Flex Ride and Access Ride, but also bringing back the 483 and the Route P, two essential routes for the town of Parker. That was one of the first things to do, and I take a lot of pride in it because a lot of folks are dependent on transit. Even though it does sometimes seem like a car county, there's a lot of folks, especially our most vulnerable populations, that need public transportation. A lot of fare free you'll see in the next 3 bullet points. So fare free for the 2022 midterm. That was my baby. That was my specific legislation and policy that I enacted. I talked with our CEO and said, you know, we attempted it prior in 2020 and it failed, unfortunately, to have free rides during election day. Can we do this? And she said, sure, this is a slam dunk. And so I was really proud of being able to get rid of any barrier that happened for anyone in a financial need to ride on RTD to ultimately go and vote. So that I took a lot of pride in. Zero fare for better air. We've done it for 2 years now as a board, where in July and August, you can ride the system for free in the hopes that you get to try out RTD. And again, the more people who ride transit, the better that is for our environment. The other thing that we just enacted was our pilot program for fare free for youth. So anyone who is 19 and under can ride RTD for free, which is incredible. And that's awesome because we have future transit riders down here in Douglas County who get to try out the system. We create a simplified fare structure. We create a fare structure that's cheaper for folks. This is allowing more people to actually ride and save them some more money for their wallets. And then the ZEV committee, What in the world is ZEV? Well, that's the Zero Emission Vehicle Ad Hoc Committee. I was one of 4 directors who is serving on that. And we were really proud because based on the work we did, by 2050, RTD is now committed for its entire fleet, buses, shuttles, electric electric trains will be zero emission based on that obligation that we placed onto it. And so that's awesome to see, awesome for our environment. Of course, I've worked with the county commissioners. I've done speaking sessions with the Lone Tree, with the city of Lone Tree and the town of Parker. I know these Parker Town Council members. I know the Lone Tree Town Council members. And of course, I know our county commissioners. And lastly, I am our current treasurer on the executive committee, and I am the vice chair of our operations and safety committee. So keeping my plate pretty full, but at the same time, getting experience while serving our community. So county commissioners, we're going to dive a little bit deeper into this, but this is just a couple roles of what the county commissioner does. So under pretty much the state law, it's stating that health, safety, and welfare of the citizens of that county is the main responsibility of your county commissioner. Other things that include, if you look in the fine details, that's a pretty broad umbrella statement right there. If you look at the fine details, though, you have long-range planning, huge part of a county commissioner, road and bridge construction, and then as well as maintenance, transportation solutions, fire mitigation, water rights and planning are huge. And of course, creating working groups to study all the topics that are involved in the growth and development of us as a county. So my last slide, and then I'm going to give it over to Stacy. These are our 3 Republican board members right now. On the left is Abe Layden, who unfortunately just won re-election in 2022. On the far right is Laura Thomas, who is term limited, and her seat is up for election in District 3, which is the Highlands Ranch area. And in the middle is the man that I'm running against, George Teal. George Teal currently is the representative for District 2. He is also the county chair for the Board of Commissioners. The Democrats have an amazing opportunity right now. If we are able to win both those seats, the one that Teal currently has, the one that I'm running for in District 2, and the District 3 seat, which there is a Republican candidate. We're still waiting finding our Democratic candidate right now. But if we're able to win both District 2 and District 3, we will have the majority as Democrats. And we all know what that ultimately will mean. That'll mean a much more progressive future. That'll mean much better ideas for our county. And overall, it's putting our county on the right track. So with that being said, I'm going to hand it back over to you, Stacy.
Thank you, Julian. I'm going to start asking you some questions about your campaign. The first question we have is, why did you decide to run for Douglas County Commissioner?
As mentioned before, I was elected back in 2020 and began serving on the RTD board in 2021. I was approached when Abe was up for election for that District 1 seat to run against him in the county commissioner race. Several people approached me. My name was brought up and I declined. I said, right now, I just got elected to my position as an RTD board member. I want to get that experience. I don't want to be climbing in politics. I'd need that experience as an RTD board member. I've committed to my voters that I'll be serving my entire term. And I knew that I wanted the experience as being a transportation member to understand a little bit more about our county. I was then approached in 2023, so last year, and folks said, well, you know, Teal is up for re-election and you're in his district now. And I said, well, that does intrigue me because I now have the experience as being an RTD board member. I grew up in this county. I teach in this county. I know this county pretty well. And I believe I'm one of the most suitable candidates to run against George Teal. And so started looking at it, started doing some exploration, and ultimately asking around folks who are Democrats who are involved in the party, saying, you know, I think I'm going to go forward and I'm going to run for this county commissioner seat. And now here we are. Because ultimately, I believe that if we have the right candidate, I believe if we have a candidate who has a platform that can win, a candidate who can appeal to independent and moderate Republicans, this is 100% a winnable election.
Thank you. So the
Of course.
second question that we have, you're the youngest candidate and at the same time the most experienced Democratic candidate running for county commissioner. With George Teal as your opponent, he's a very skilled and experienced incumbent. How will your experience running a winning campaign for RTD Board District G help in your race against George Teal?
George Teal naturally will have the advantage. He's the incumbent. If you study politics, you naturally will have an advantage as an incumbent. We're also still a fairly decent red county, and him running as a Republican, he doesn't believe that there's real challenge to him running for his reelection. But I do believe not only the experience that I've had serving this county for the last 3 years, but also my experience as a teacher and a coach, and my experience growing up and knowing this county will be crucial and huge to winning over independent voters, but also Republicans, especially as we start presenting smart ideas that don't only apply to Democrats, but they also apply to Republicans, independents, non-voters, everyone in our county. Our platform and the policies we're running on benefit the county for the better, not just for a few, but for everyone. And I think if we're able to show the light of the lack of oversight, the cronyism, and the infighting that's been going on under the leadership of these county commissioners for the last couple of years, we will be able to win over folks. Because vast majority of people, if not everyone, wants the betterment of this county if they live in this county.
Yeah, and I think a lot of us are tired of seeing stuff in the news about how these county commissioners are attacking Laura Thomas. So I agree with you. Um,
Yes, look that up if you are curious and you want to
yeah.
familiarize yourself.
The third question we have, are there any activities that you do as an RTD board member that are transferable skills to being a county commissioner?
So, as a board member, you're ultimately in control of policy decisions for the entire RTD region, which is much bigger than Douglas County. It expands all across the metro area and beyond. So, we're in charge of overseeing RTD's budget, operational functions, and the future planning projects. That might sound very familiar to kind of what I presented at the beginning of my presentation. These are 100% transferable skills to being a county commissioner. And again, my 3 years as the board director so far, I think it'll be a pretty easy transition to becoming a county commissioner. It requires a lot of policy and governance experience in this county. And that's what I've been doing for the last 3 years. Again, commissioners are also in charge of balancing a budget, overseeing different commissions and different boards and working groups that have been appointed in the county. And that's what I've been doing for the last 3.5 years. And specifically now taking on the treasurer position, that's 100% going to be transferable as I take on my role as county commissioner.
This isn't on my sheet, but I want to ask it.
Absolutely.
Um, what what is the budget for RTD in a typical year?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. It is
I mean,
multi,
how many millions are we talking about?
um, quite a few, quite a bunch when it comes down to the millions of the RTD budget. I recommend folks check it out itself. The big thing you should check out in understanding the budget for RTD2, which is a major misconception, how RTD is funded. So most of RTD is actually not funded by ticket sales, but rather it's funded on sales tax. So, and we only collect about 1% sales tax compared to other transit agencies. It's roughly about 22%. So that's something I would look into, especially when it comes down to looking at our overall budget and how much we do collect, but also how much we're limited in our collection based on the overall based on our overall limitations. So one thing to talk to your state legislator as a side note.
Well, I guess what I'm wanting to ask when it comes to that, their budget, how big is their budget in the millions compared to Douglas County's budget? Because this is all new to me and most of the voters that are going to be listening to you.
So I would have to look at the comparable numbers with the county budget compared with RTD. Something I can get back to you on. But it is crucial to kind of understand also with the budget breakdown. I was actually looking at the county commissioner budget. earlier today and looking at what percentage goes into each of it. And I think it's like 42% currently goes into personnel, which is interesting. But yeah, it is 100% transferable when it comes to those numbers itself. The specific numbers, I can get back to you on that.
Cool. Um, if you're elected county commissioner, we know that this is not an 8 to 5 position. Douglas County has had several disasters and crisis level events. Uh, Things like the tornado that came through Highlands Ranch, fires in Southwest Douglas County, hailstorms. How would you handle a 12 to 14-hour day with the committee work, board meetings, crisis management, and just the regular work day of a commissioner? Um, it just sounds daunting.
Yeah. Well, I'm currently working a 14-hour day now. Now that I'm campaigning, it's probably closer to, I feel like 16 hours. I feel the lack of sleep that I'm getting. It is crucial to kind of know how much work is actually going to go into a county commissioner's job. I believe I'm 100% ready because I'm not only working full-time as a teacher, I'm sometimes working full-time as an RTD director. So transitioning into a long day for me, that is quite an easy task. Between coaching, teaching, serving on the RTD board, I sometimes will have days where I'll probably start teaching at 7:30, over watching kids about 7 o'clock, and then coaching till 4:30, and then having a board meeting that will go till 11 p.m. So I've had several of those days already. I've trained my bandwidth with that. I've trained my energy for that for the last 3 years or so. And honestly, I think I'm ready for the transition for a 12 to 14-hour day.
It sounds like anybody who wants to run for commissioner better be prepared to do that, or they're not going to make it.
Yeah,
um,
there's a
well,
lot of work that goes into going to being a county commissioner.
yeah. Um, we've had 3 Republican commissioners that you mentioned running the county for the last few years with some serious infighting between them. How would you handle the 2 very strong personalities that you would be on the county commission with, who are used to infighting? How would you deal with that?
I'll be honest with you, I serve on a 15 board member currently, and there's a lot of different personalities that represent different geographic areas as well as different cultural areas as well. Working with those 15 board members and again taking on the role as our vice chair for our Operations Safety Committee, it happened today. I was on an hour-and-a-half phone call with one of our board members and explaining how to balance it ultimately out with our time and planning with our work plan going forward as a committee. I have the experience going the last 3 years of working with a lot of different personalities. That is crucial though, because no matter what, there will be a difference in opinion. Abe Layden will have 2 years. He is a Republican. And in the best case scenario, you'll have 2 Democrats and a Republican. You could also have a split vote where you have 1 Democrat and 2 Republicans. The big solution I've kind of learned, and again, mitigating expectations or managing expectations, I really should say, is understanding who you ultimately are. You're a servant to the public. You're a servant to the people. Those are your boss. Those folks are your boss. And so that's what I've generally told, sometimes when egos get a little bit out of hand, and we've had a lot of egos out of hand with our current county commissioner board, it's not about the 3 of them. It won't be about the 3 of us as county commissioners. It's about the folks that we represent, about the hundreds of thousands of folks in Douglas County that we represent. And again, like I said, vast majority, if not everyone, wants the betterment of this county. So again, making sure that we have policy decisions and we don't get lost in the politics, but rather the policy making, that's what's going to be crucial and important to working with 2 other commissioners.
Commissioner Laura Thomas, in a recent article, mentioned that Douglas County government has steadily grown bigger and reserves have been depleted. Can you discuss what you feel needs to be done to stay within the county budget and still provide the services that Douglas County residents have grown to expect?
Yeah, so that's, like I said, that's another big goal of a county commissioner. And also, the role of a director is making sure that you have a balanced budget. You're ultimately getting trusted as stewards of the taxpayers' dollars. And if you look into it and you look at the county budgets where it's at, there is a shortfall with to an extent. Again, I can't give you the exact numbers on it, but as I looked at the charts as it is from today, It is crucial to have a balanced budget. If you don't have a balanced budget, you won't have a functioning entity in the long run. So my promise is, as a county commissioner, is to make sure one of the top priorities is keeping a balanced budget in the county. Um, that does start with oversight. That's a huge part of it. And if you haven't noticed with our campaign, that's what we're really running on is oversight. We want to make sure there isn't taxpayer waste, which I believe there has been, specifically in regards of the creation of the health department, but I can get into that a little bit later. But looking into what assets we have and making sure those assets are managed properly, looking into creative solutions as well as trying to find incentives for both small and big businesses to come down to Douglas County. And to be honest with you, I think a key to that of attracting in business and attracting in more growth is showing that we are a county that says yes. That's crucial and that's important. So making sure that we have partnerships with not only local entities that are elected, but also local entities that are in the corporate world or the small business world, that's going to be huge. And I honestly think getting 2 Democrats elected onto the county commissioner board is huge because you now have 2 county commissioners who are showing, hey, they have progressive ideologies. They want to go forward. They want to say yes to the opportunity of growth.
This wasn't on the list, but I want to ask it because you brought up business, and I'm in the business world, and it's important to me when I see growth. We've got Lockheed is a big employer in the county, and they want to know everything that's going on with the county commissioners. And we've got a lot of tech businesses. Aerospace is big up and down the Front Range. Um, how do you feel as a commissioner you'd be supporting bringing jobs and helping maybe even with tax breaks for smaller companies that are subcontractors to these big companies?
It's all about incentivizing coming down here. So if you have it where you say we are a business friendly county, responsible business friendly county, and we say come on in because it's a domino effect when it ultimately comes to the economic growth in the entire county itself. The more you say yes to growth in a county, specifically growth that's intelligent, the better the county is going to do in the long run. So again, saying yes to those businesses, saying we're open to it. To be honest with you, Lone Tree actually has a really good model with it. There's other incentives that they're doing a great job of. For instance, looking into buildings and businesses that come along the RTD train station. They're offering what are known as eco passes, which basically allows you to ride free on any RTD car or train, bus or shuttle. That's huge. Incentivizing businesses to come down here and say, hey, we'll give all your employers an eco pass under the RTD system, or we'll give them discounts or coupons into all these local businesses. That's how you make connections, and that's how you grow the county. That's how you make it economically healthy.
In a recent article, Douglas County Commissioner Abe Layden said right now there's no existing water plan that covers the entire county, including rural unincorporated areas in the county, and that not having a plan is planning to fail. So the board created a water commission to address this failure. Can you give us your feedback on the Water Commission's work to date and how Douglas County gets its water and what changes you'd want to see if you're elected to commissioner?
Yeah. So if there's anything that we spearhead when it comes down to urgency of this election, it's water. It's water rights. If you look into pretty much any report that you're looking into, the county is going to run out of water. That was one of the big things that the current board of commissioners kind of ran on, was this idea of creating a water commission, which I do want to point out was created, I believe, November of 2023. So it is very new. It is very new. This hasn't historically been around. So if you aren't familiar with the Water Commission, it was specifically appointed by the current county commissioners. It's made up of 11 members. 3 of each come from each of the 3 districts, District 1, District 2, and District 3. And then 2 members are appointed at large. If you look into the background of those folks who are currently serving on that Water Commission, you will start seeing ties with what's known as the San Luis Valley Project. The San Luis Valley Project was a project that was proposed and shut down last May of 2023 of basically stealing water, I'll put it that way, from the San Luis Valley and bringing it to Douglas County. The problem is that's not sustainable at all. That is not a long-term solution. It's environmentally irresponsible. It's dangerous to just be stealing water from another location, and it is not a long-term plan. We aren't thinking about long-term plans. There's such a lack of oversight with this county, with this county's leadership, when it comes down to looking to turn these long-term plans all along. So a little history, like I did say, the San Luis Valley project did fail. Basically a project for water theft. Two of the current county commissioners voted against it, going forward with it. So that's why it failed. That was Abe Layden and Laura Thomas. The third who voted in favor of it was George Teal. So I guarantee with a George Teal-led county commissioner board, that project will be investigated again. We'll go forward with an unethical project. We're going to go forward with a project that is not environmentally friendly, and we're going to go forward with a project that might have water for Douglas County for 2 decades. But what happens then? We go into the route of trying to steal water from somewhere else. That is not the solution for going forward. So again, it's overall this idea of oversight and going back to the water board. There's a fair question. Does that water board need to exist? One of my first actions as county commissioner is to do an investigation into that water commission. If it does need to exist, do we have the qualified people on there to actually be serving? Should it be a county commissioner who's actually appointing these people, or should it be elected positions as it is in other water boards? That is what we need to look at. Again, you'll start seeing a pattern here. There's a lack of oversight, and over their tenure as county commissioners, they've been giving themselves more and more power through appointed commissions and appointed boards that they're appointing. So to answer your question, it's an investigation into it. Does it need to exist? And if it is existing, do we have the right members on it? But overall, when it comes to water, there's a lot of solutions that are better than the ones being proposed.
This leads me into my next question. How would you envision Douglas County save or store water to counter the negative impacts of climate crisis? We have a drought year. Where's the water going to be coming from?
That's a great question. And again, this is a universal thing. We do this at RTD. We do this as a public entity. Peer studies. You have to look at other counties. You have to look at other agencies who have figured out how to do it right. And if you look, for instance, Orange County Water District, I believe is the one, is a great example of when it comes down to water recycling. So that's one of the things, again, I'm not an expert on water, but I at least can admit that as a future county commissioner of we need a peer study. We need to appoint the right people to figure out what is the most environmentally friendly and also the best solution for the long term when it comes to the water crisis that we're facing. So if you look into water recycling, from my understanding, is you look at generally used water, and this generally used water can go back to agricultural needs, as well as non-drinking water needs as well. So recycling that water, thinking about, pumping it back into golf courses, for example, that would be a great idea. That's part of it. That's where you address it with the needs that you already have. The other thing is making sure when it comes down to developments overall, that we're rewarding and incentivizing developments to be smart about their water usage. Again, giving incentives to folks of developers saying, grass lawns might not be the way of the future. We live in a desert. We don't live in a grassland, which folks need to understand. And necessarily building more suburban complexes with larger and larger lawns isn't going to be the way to go. It's, again, incentivizing growth that is intelligent going forward, and as well as doing peer studies, giving it to the professionals and understanding what is the best solution for water, not in the next 20, 30 years, but the next 100, 200, 300 years.
So I'm going to move into discussing fire mitigation because it's a really important topic. Douglas County's had multiple fires on the western side of the county and on the eastern plains, with fires all the way from the backcountry and Highlands Ranch to Larkspur and the south. We're seeing droughts, very high winds. We've even had tornadoes. Can you discuss what you feel the county commissioners should do to help mitigate fire from spreading and creating another Marshall Fire that happened in Boulder, but having it happen in our county?
So it's a great question that I don't think gets asked enough when it comes to fire mitigation. Again, getting to the point of we live in a desert. We are very vulnerable to a fire breaking out, a wildfire breaking out, very similar to the Marshall Fire. So if you aren't familiar with the Marshall Fire, it was 2021, broke out up in Boulder. It was the most expensive fire and most costly fire of this entire state's history. I think it was over $2 billion in damage. Two people were killed. It 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 was a disaster. And to think that that couldn't happen in Douglas County is foolish. Again, it goes to oversight. You start with looking at where is it currently when it comes down to a commission or a working group that studies what are the most vulnerable areas when it comes to fire mitigation or a wildfire breaking forward. So it's crucial as a county that we look into that and being prepared, not post fire, not when the fire is going on, but being proactive in our approach to making sure, hey, do we have smart evacuation plans? Do we have a strategy for that? Is that efficient? Do we have mitigation techniques that are already going on? So for instance, um, as it looks right now, I believe the county commissioners have an invasive weed or invasive plant working group or commission that looks into it. That 100% should be tied into fire mitigation. Looking where there is vegetation that could easily be, managed is a huge one. That's very common practice in California is having vegetation mitigation or vegetation management commissions or working groups to make sure, hey, the county, these are our vulnerable spots in the county. We need to make sure if for some reason a fire starts, and there will be a fire that starts, that it doesn't spread. That's what we have to be proactive about ultimately. And again, it comes down to oversight. And it's a good question to look into our county commissioner board of there's a lack of oversight when it comes down to our health department and when it comes down to our water and our development. Is there a lack of oversight when it comes down to fire mitigation?
Do you feel like we need a fire safety commission that works with neighborhoods and ranches to provide training and evaluation on tree removal, tall grass, wood piles, and other items that can be a fire hazard and cause issues between neighbors if there's a fire where it ends up being like a domino effect? I mean, how would you feel about finding a homeowner or a business that refuses to mitigate fire hazards?
Yeah, so let's start with what we kind of have in place as a county as it is, and then we'll talk about,
Okay.
hey, what does it come down to, making sure your neighbors are all on board. So first off, to answer your question, I do believe there should be a countywide fire safety commission. From my understanding, the Community Wildfire Protection Plan or the CWPP, that was last updated in 2022, I believe. And basically that kind of talked about what we talked about of, hey, are there high risk, but I honestly think there should be a working group that meets at least annually to look at those reports. Again, this is a report that hasn't been looked at for 2 years. Looking at the resources that we can use for vegetation management, investing more into the programs like that. And then again, making sure folks are kind of planned out if in case there is a wildfire that breaks out or a fire gets out of control. And the question of, hey, are you going to find a business? Or are you going to find an individual regarding if they're not following our fire mitigation plan? And it's not the idea of our fire mitigation plan. It's the idea that you're part of it. It's not ours as a county commissioner. It's ours as residents. And if we're just being, you know, if we're ultimately refusing and we're just being stubborn and not removing vegetation that is dangerous, that that's 100% that should be fined because you're potentially going to weigh $100 fine compared to $2 billion worth of damage potentially. Folks need to buy in. They need to buy in and make sure that they protect their community.
Okay. The next thing I want to chat about is property tax. It's a very big issue to everybody in this county. The Douglas County Board of County Commissioners, in its capacity as the County Board of Equalization, approved a $28 million tax relief for Douglas County homeowners earlier this year. And then the State Board of Equalization rescinded that relief. Can you discuss your ideas to bring property relief to bootstrap families and seniors on fixed budgets?
Yeah, so I do want to clarify. I do believe property tax reliefs are crucial for this county. I do believe that, and we need to make sure we're making this county comfortable for folks. Where I think we can do a little bit better when it comes down to, property tax relief is looking at our most vulnerable communities, which includes, seniors who are on a strict fixed budget, young adults who are struggling to find, a home in Douglas County or struggling to pay rent or pay their mortgage. We need to make sure it's comfortable for folks. So I do believe a tax relief for this year is just one of many ways that we can provide for the future. Um, you will see as you give folks back, if you give money back to the community, it's healthier for the economy. You have to watch out where you have clots in the economy where people are just, protecting their money because they're worried about prices going up, or, folks that might be wealthier are doing the same and not putting their money back into the community. When folks are more willing to spend when they have that extra money, they'll spend on their small businesses. Their local businesses will see the benefit of that. And when you spend on your local businesses, that ultimately grows your economy down here in the county. So I'm not only in support of taxpayer relief for this upcoming year. I believe that to grow a healthy economy in Douglas County, as it has been specifically with, property taxes as a major one, is looking into potentially future tax reliefs or tax incentives specifically for those most vulnerable communities.
That's really important because there are a lot of people that are living paycheck to paycheck. We have seniors that are on fixed incomes that they may own their house outright, but they can't afford the taxes, the insurance, and just the inflation in normal living expenses.
Well, I'm a school
So
teacher, Stacy, so I
yeah,
love it.
so you know what
I
I'm saying.
100% love it.
Well, county property tax mostly goes to schools. Governor Polis is suggesting that we go back to the 2020 assessments. I even saw something the other day about 2022 assessments. What would you do to help lower property taxes, especially for those seniors on a fixed income and young families who are barely able to afford moving into their first new home? Would you try to create programs for these vulnerable classes?
So it's funny that you mentioned that they've actually looked into programs such as this since the 1960s, specifically. It's known as a property tax circuit breaker. They have actually started talking about this in Colorado as well. So basically, what that works as a property tax circuit breaker is for fixed income seniors, for young folks, for folks who are struggling economically. The idea behind this program would be if a certain percentage of your annual income is going to property taxes, specifically, you will get a reimbursement from the county. So it helps out with the most vulnerable folks in the county who are living those paycheck to paycheck. And specifically, the program works where it's an application process. People apply and you say, here's my annual income, and this is how much my property taxes are. What that allows then is not only a tax refund to, potentially our entire county, but a tax refund specifically for those who are hurting the most in our county. They've looked into it. I believe it's Washington, D.C. and New York. Some of the East Coast states have looked into this program, and I think it's an excellent model for us to specifically help out with our most vulnerable communities. It starts with a tax relief for the entire county, but it goes further to where you look at it where if you are vulnerable in our county in an economic standpoint, which is me, this is 100% me, I would qualify for such a program. We will help you out and give you an extra tax incentive.
That's great. I mean, that's really smart. Um, I'm going to talk about affordable housing real quick. What type of ideas do you have to provide affordable housing for our service industry professionals we rely on in Douglas County, like our first responders, nurses, teachers, etc. Um, up in the mountains, they have programs because everything is very expensive up there. Um, how would you envision something like that here in Douglas County?
Yeah, so we need a county where folks who serve this county firefighters, first responders, teachers, nurses, and police officers, they should have every right to live in the county they serve. They look at studies with this, specifically with police officers. Those who live in their county will do a better job serving as a police officer because they're invested in their community. So one of the first things I would look into, so addressing it, yes, we need more affordable housing in this county as itself. And I'm not talking about affordable meaning $750,000. I'm not meaning three-fourths of $1 million. I mean true affordable housing for, again, folks who are buying their first home, folks who are downgrading from their home size. We need that in the county. One of the first things I would look into specifically would be Dr. Cog. So the Denver Region of Coalition of Governments is a great place to look into it for funding models potentially. These projects, I think specifically, if you have what's known as P3s, which is a private-public partnership, if you have projects like this and say, hey, we're willing to split a little bit of the check, we're willing to put in some of our budget to invest into those affordable housing projects, and private entities will 100% jump on. Other public entities will 100% jump on. I think specifically with RTD and our RTD stations, the I-25 corridor has excellent opportunities for an expansion of affordable housing. Specifically, you could be 20 minutes, 15, 10, 5 minutes walkable from an RTD light rail station. That allows you to access the entire metro district. And if you think about a plan saying, hey, we want to expand and have 500 units around this major transportation hub, you don't think RTD will sign on with that? You don't think businesses who want to invest in their community will sign up and say, oh, hey, my worker is now a light rail ride away from my office. You need these private-public partnerships and explain why is it important to have affordable housing in this county. Like I said, when people live in their county, they'll do a better job in their county. They'll want to serve their county and their community.
Okay. I'm going to move on to health department questions. It's one of my pet peeves about how the Tri-County Health Department was pulled apart. We're still somewhat in the pandemic with COVID, RSV, and flu. The county commissioners tore the county from Tri-County Health. This decision forced the county to set up a costly single county health department with severely reduced services. Do you feel that the county is prepared for the next pandemic should a COVID level pandemic happen in the future? And if not, what steps do you feel need to be made to ensure that the health and safety of the residents is taken care of?
So it was a great question, and I have to address the exiting of the Tri-County Health and the creation of the Douglas County Board of Health itself was entirely political. I have yet to hear an argument ultimately behind of why this was beneficial for Douglas County. If anything, the creation of this health board took away resources from Douglas County. The big reason of why it was created was the mask mandate. It was 3 commissioners who did not like the mask mandate that lasted only a couple months, and they reactively created their own health board. It's just another example of this power grabbing that's been going on for the last couple of years with this board, and the creation of these different commissions and boards that directly are appointed by the county commissioners, or the county commissioners are sitting on them themselves. There's such a conflict of interest. I believe it was Thomas and Teal who originally sat on that board of health. And my question is regarding their expertise in health and in health management and health care. That's what we really need to look into. So the question is, there's really 2 solutions, and ultimately it'll lead back to your question of the pandemic. As we currently sit now, we're not ready for the next pandemic. And it's a question of when, not if. And if people think COVID is its own case scenario, it's not. And based on the resources that the county currently have with the county board of health, it is not prepared. Do they have the masks ready? Do they have the stations ready for a potential future vaccine? Do they potentially have it where they can house folks? These are all different questions where I don't think this county board is committed to. It was really, again, a creation of an anti-mask policy. So there's really 2 solutions looking forward once I'm sitting on the county commissioner board. First off, the thing you have to look into is there's really only 2 options. It's either 1, Douglas County goes back into Tri-County or partners up with another county again because we do not have the resources. And frankly, we don't know the know-how when it comes down to the current folks sitting on the board if they are prepared for it. So that's the first thing you have to ask yourself of, do we need to join another board or another county that has the resources that we need for a future outbreak? The second one is, if that's not the route we're going to go down, we need to make sure this health board has members that are sitting on it that are actually experts in the health field. That's crucial. And again, that goes
Doctors.
around. Do we have experts on a water commission? Do we have experts when it comes down to these planning commissions? We need to make sure these folks aren't just hand appointed because they're friends with the county commissioners or they're connected with the county commissioners. And again, it's making sure the right people are serving and making sure we have the right funding and right resources for these boards or commissions.
Well, I find it quite frightening, Julian, what's going on, because I look at what we had prior with Tri-County Health. I mean, when you looked at their website and the things that you could access, everything from services for women, children, the elderly, public health clinic, and vaccinations. And I don't see that Douglas County is prepared with that. And I don't see that they're checking anything with COVID, flu, or RSV counts. I think they probably stopped in the last 6 months doing wastewater counts. So
Yep.
we wouldn't even know. And by that point, the vulnerable people in this county would just, they'd be dead.
Right. And that's what we always forget about again is, oh, it's an affluent county. You know, we all have money here in the county. That's not true at all. That's not true at all. Again, and the folks that get impacted by these crises are going to be the most vulnerable, you know, and that's who we really need to be looking out for when it comes down to this oversight.
And I brought up a couple of these when I was just mentioning it, but my next question would be discussing if we can try to get to the level of what we had with Tri-County Services, which is pretty much now Arapahoe County. What services do you feel are missing or lacking when it comes to things like the services for women, children, and seniors? And nobody's talking about inspections of restaurants, gyms, public pools, rec centers, senior centers, nursing homes. I mean, that's scary too.
I think you just hit him. I'll be honest with you. The two target audiences I really look into is, again, how can you get to the level of Tri-County, Arapahoe County, whatever you want to call it now? How can you get to the service levels? One of the biggest gaps is regarding healthcare for women. That's a huge one that we have to look into for Douglas County because there's plenty of folks, plenty of women in this county who are going to other counties or other health departments to access medical needs. The other one you mentioned was seniors. You know, again, folks that are more vulnerable, folks that we think we have these services, but when you actually start looking into it and you need health insurance or you need help with your health or healthcare in any way, you start looking into it and you start realizing there's gaps. There's major gaps. And another one you brought up as well is the oversight of cleanliness of our facilities and cleanliness of restaurants, buildings, and businesses in the county. There's always this assumption, again, and that's where you never want to rest on your laurels, you know, and it is an affluent county and it's a county that, you know, folks make quite a bit of money, but you don't want to rest on that. You want to constantly have oversight when it comes to it. And again, that's oversight that benefits the entire community, making sure that we have healthy and clean restaurants and businesses, making sure we actually have healthcare for all our citizens. That's a no-brainer.
Okay. So I'm going to move on to development and growth. With Douglas County being one of the fastest growing counties in the state of Colorado, it's crucial to balance growth in Douglas County with the impact on small business, traffic, transportation, parks, open space, water rights, and local education. As a county commissioner, what would you do different from the current county commissioners to balance growth? We see that as we move south into Castle Rock, it's like huge things are being built, and it's like replicating what's going on in other parts of the county. And it's like, okay, do we need all these services? And where we do need the services, are those the right services and facilities and stores and things being put in those locations?
we're running on really three big things for with our campaign right now. We've talked about a lot, but one of the three bigs we're talking about is overall development and development and planning that is intelligent. And what exactly does that mean? Having planning that is intelligent when it comes down to your overall growth models. As we have it where newer generations are entering the workforce, as we have it as newer generations are having a say in how politics work and how policy is ultimately enacted, you have to really understand folks want to be part of communities. This idea of the 15-minute city, a walkable community where I have open space and I have a park or I have a center area where I can enjoy my time. I can go to my local coffee shop. I can go and walk to my local diner. I can even go and walk to my gym or either my healthcare provider. That's a big incentive for folks moving into communities. Castle Rock's actually done a pretty decent job with it. Lone Tree's done a pretty decent job of it when it looks into these walkable cities, because in theory, it's, hey, I'm living in my condo, or I'm living in my apartment. I go down, I have a park that I'm able to walk to. I have a trail I'm able to walk to. I have my coffee shop that I'm able to walk to. You get the idea. It's all walkable. Folks enjoy that. Folks enjoy it. Yes, of course, it's not eliminating, car-friendly areas or driving your car at all, but it's smart planning. It all connects with one another. When you build, spaces that are, either shared or spaces that are well and smart developed, it's going to help your water usage. It's going to help your environment. It's going to help that less people are in their cars. So again, rewarding developments that consider that, that's what we need. Think about coming with a developer saying, you know what? We love that all the residents who are going to be living in these homes, not necessarily apartments or condominiums, are 15, 20 minutes walk to their nearest light rail station. We love that because, again, going back to it, then you have the small businesses start developing. You have the coffee shops start popping up and you start building communities. That's what folks want in Douglas County. Every person wants a community. And again, rewarding smart developers who have that intelligent design model of, we're not building neighborhoods, we're not building developments, we're building communities here in Douglas County. That's what we really look into. And that's not the model we're at right now. The model we're at right now is further, further, further out. We want all our land, and take up all the land possible. That's not sustainable. It's not
Yeah.
sustainable on our water. It's not sustainable on our environment. It's not sustainable about protecting our land usage.
Yeah. So my next question has to do with young adults in the community. Only 20% of young adults turned out to vote during the school board election in 2023. How do you hope to inspire young adults to get out the vote in Douglas County in this big election that's coming up in November?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a great question, because if you look, statistically, young adults are sometimes the folks who are passionate about enough, but sometimes don't carry over to the ballot box. And how I relate is I'm a young person. I believe I was the second or youngest person to ever get elected to the RTD board. And I 100% can relate to young folks down in the county. I understand the struggles. I understand the issues. I understand the paycheck issues of, living month to month. I understand of how difficult it is to pay a mortgage or pay rent. That's something I 100% can understand. And if we have a young candidate who's running and can relate to those young folks, that's how you get out the vote. I truly believe when we won in 2020, I was living in the Lone Tree Apartments off of Park Meadows Drive. If you know Lone Tree pretty well, it's the apartments leading to the mall. There's several apartment complexes. We had our campaign sign in our window and in my car that was parked in the lot, and we talked to folks too in those apartment complexes and said, hey, I'm 25 years old at the time back in 2020, 29 now, and we'll be 30 in this election, so we'll have some years on me. But when I was back running at 25, I was explaining, hey, I grew up here. I know what the struggles are. I want a more efficient system with RTD. I want service to be returned. That related and resonated with people. And I truly believe we wouldn't have won in 2020 without talking to those folks in those apartment complexes. We need the young vote. If we don't have the young vote come out, we will lose this election. And the best way to appeal to the young voters and relate to young voters is having a candidate who understands it, who lives that life, who is a young voter.
I agree. And I also feel that if we have the young vote, it's going to help the up ballot, all the other ballot races that are going on.
And again, it carries everyone up because
Yeah.
young folks are much more progressive. Young folks are much more likely to support the Democratic candidate. It's again presenting a Democratic candidate that they're willing to come out and vote for.
So I'm going to talk next about the Douglas County Democrat race for the caucus, the assembly to get on the ballot. Your opponent in the primary race, Angela Thomas, we invited her to be here, and I forgot to mention that at the beginning of our event, but we invited her to be a part of this forum, and she declined, so she had her chance to participate. She served as the chair for the last 2.5 years for the Douglas County Democrats. She's lived in Colorado for, I guess, 5 years, never held an elected government office before. She has a lot of friends and supporters in the party that are going to advocate for her at caucus and assembly. Can you discuss what you bring to this race that's different from Angela Thomas and what you're able to do to get the independent vote to win in your race against George Teal that you don't feel she's going to be able to get?
So let me start with this. I'm running against George Teal. I'm running to be your next county commissioner for District 2. Everyone has every right to run in whatever race they like. But why I decided to run, and again, this isn't an easy task. I'm running against the former chair of the Douglas County Democratic Party in Douglas County. There's plenty of resources and plenty of connections that Angela has made with the Douglas County Democrats. That is not the majority of folks, and is by far not the majority of voters when it comes down to Douglas County. You need to reel in independents. You need to have moderate Republicans vote for you. And again, if you think about it, if the highest experience comes down to being the chair of a party that's by far the minority down in a county, you have to start questioning if you're an independent voter, if you're a moderate, Republican. Well, are they looking at the best interest for the county, or are they looking at the best interest for the Democratic Party? And that's why I ultimately decided to run. Is I do not believe you're going to appeal to a wide range of voters with that technique. You're going to appeal to a wide range of voters through, like I mentioned, having a young individual who's passionate about this, who can relate to young voters and get the young voters out, but also a young individual who's grown up in this county, is a teacher in this county, is a coach in this county, and represents this county and has policy decision making experience on his belt. That is what's going to be important, and that's how you're going to persuade voters to ultimately vote for you. Again, anyone is more than welcome to run for this race. I'm running against George Teal. I'm tired of the cronyism. I'm tired of the lack of oversight, and I care and I love this county deeply. I grew up in this county. I want the best for our county's future. And we have the opportunity to win this race. We need to make sure we as Democrats, we select the best candidate who can win in November. That's what's crucial. This election is too crucial for us to squander. We need to make sure we have our best candidates who are running, who can beat the Republicans in November and ultimately create a county that's the best in the country. Create a county who has a brighter future, a future that impacts all the individuals in this county. It welcomes in folks in this county and allows it to grow. That's the future we hold. That's why this election is so crucial. That's why we need to win.
Wow, sounds like you've wrapped up your campaign here today. We had some questions that were in the chat, but I think I basically answered most of them. If anybody else has questions that they want to put in the chat, we can try to ask them, but we're already about 10 after 8 and we want to be respectful of everybody's time. Here's one coming up. Everybody's really enjoying your presentation. They're thanking you and appreciate the opportunity to hear from you. One of the other attendees said young voters would love to hear from you through social media connections. Yeah.
Well, and if I could just make one point real quick, Stacy. So we have a very crucial process that's going to happen, what's coming up. Saturday, March 9th, this coming Saturday, is the Douglas County Democratic Caucus. We need as many people as possible to be delegates and sign up. The more folks that come out, the more participation we have. That's the best for the Democratic Party, no matter what. We'd love for you guys to ultimately cast a vote for us as delegates at the county assembly, which will be happening March 27th, which is a Wednesday night, just as a heads up. Both of these are through Zoom. They're both virtual. So you have your caucus coming up Saturday. Caucus basically allows you to sign up to be a delegate. The delegates don't vote for who their candidates will be until assembly. And you will potentially have multiple candidates appear on the ballot, specifically for the county commissioner race, or if there's any other races where folks are eyeing for the spot. But it's really crucial you guys sign up to be at caucus so that you can sign up to be a delegate. If you can't make it this Saturday, there is a form on our website on bouquetfordugco.com for you to sign up if you can't make it on Saturday. The other thing is, and I believe we can also put it in the chat for the form to sign up to be a delegate as well, but spread the word with folks who are passionate about this, who think we can win, okay? Well, who know we can win. We can win in November, but we need your help getting there. So that's crucial for you to sign up for caucus and ultimately sign up for assembly.
And I have done the virtual caucus and assembly, and it's kind of nice because you could literally on a Saturday morning sit in your jammies if you want, drink your coffee, cook some breakfast while you have your laptop or your iPad next to you, and watch the presentations from the different candidates that are running, not just for county commissioner, House district, Senate district, our congressional candidates, and more, depending on where you located. You'll get to meet people in meeting rooms that are set up on Zoom that are part of your little district. And then when it comes to assembly, you'll have a chance to vote. And on Wednesday night, you can come to the assembly with your dinner and a cocktail or a glass of wine and enjoy that. So that we've made it really easy with Douglas County Democrats to make it easy to vote and to participate in this process as a delegate.
Well, thank you so much, Stacy, for moderating. Again, visit us at bouquetfordugco.com. It is FOR if you are curious. That gives a little bit more of my background and the policies that we kind of talked about tonight.
Thank you.